I sat and stared at my luggage and the plastic bags lying next to it. It was hard to understand what was left of my life in that sad pile. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Everything was supposed to be completely different. I didn't want any of this. But you don't always get what you want, do you? Until recently, that had been a problem. For the most part, I always got what I wanted. I was the youngest in my family. My sister Kate was 6 years older than me. My mom and dad had been trying for years to have a second child, which they wanted very much. You might think my sister was angry with me or jealous of me. But that wasn't the case. I was her child, not the little sister my parents gave her so she could love. A real doll, like the one she got for Christmas. I even wore the same clothes. Everyone adored me, at least at home. At school, I encountered a few teachers who were immune to my charms. Oh well, their loss. Some girls at university were angry at me because their boyfriends looked at me or sometimes touched me. It's not my fault, right? I didn't encourage them. In any case, by that time I had already met Glenn. My big, strong, handsome husband. He was my prince. He adored me. He couldn't do enough for me. It wasn't a one-sided relationship. I loved him too, of course. I believed in the school of thought that said, treat them harshly so they don't lose interest. But I tried not to go too far so he wouldn't get out of control. Not so much that I would annoy him enough to make him leave me. Glenn was handsome in those days. Girls lined up for him, but he was too busy looking at me to notice them. He was so handsome and didn't seem to realize it. We got married soon after college. He started working at an insurance company, and I became an administrator at a local college. He was successful, and we lived comfortably, if not richly. He could have achieved more, but he insisted on a balance between work and personal life. His father was a workaholic and died when Glenn was 12, and he never even got to know him. Glenn didn't want to repeat that mistake and work all the time. He worked hard, but he wanted to spend a lot of time with me and our daughters when they came along. He was and remains a true family man, a wonderful father to Allison and Emma. Sometimes it was hard for me to be a mother. It didn't come easily to me. Don't get me wrong, I adored my girls. But when they became more independent, it was hard for me. Glenn, on the other hand, was a natural father. He never neglected me, planned romantic dates and vacations, and we had a fantastic sex life until he got sick. Even then, he was good in bed because part of his soul was still a teenager. Glenn developed rheumatoid arthritis. He retired and was very upset about his condition at first. He was very depressed and went through a period of grief, but being Glenn, he eventually came to terms with it. He said he was being selfish and spoiling himself, and that he needed to pull himself together and get on with his life. That was Glenn. Unlike me, he wasn't selfish. Considering his limited mobility and pain, he coped quite well. He couldn't stand or walk for long. He had a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, and a mobility scooter. He used all of these devices depending on how he felt that day. It was very hard for me to see my big, strong man almost disappear before my eyes, but no one ever asked me how I was coping. Poor Glenn, he deserved so much better than me. The only thing he hated was when I lifted his wheelchair or scooter into the car and took them out. It upset him greatly when he saw me struggling with it. I probably didn't help because I was panting and snorting heavily. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not good at caring for sick people. I'll also admit that Glenn would never have complained if he were in my place. He would have taken care of me. Even when he was in pain, he took care of my needs. He cared about me. That's why what I did was so terrible. I felt like I deserved it. I didn't deserve it, and neither did he. My sister Kate and I always stayed in touch. Despite her best efforts, we weren't the closest sisters. Family was so important to Glenn that he made sure we got together for birthdays and holidays. He did all that for me. In turn, Kate adored him, and her son Ryan idolized his Uncle Glenn because he always took an interest in him. Kate always said that by marrying Glenn, she got the best brother she could have ever hoped for. I couldn't say the same about her husband, Peter. He was a decent man, but the complete opposite of my Glenn. He was selfish and smug. I didn't notice it, but he was the male version of me. It was hard for Glenn at times, but he coped and listened patiently when Peter bragged about his wealth or tried to dominate the conversation. I believed that Peter saw this as a weakness in Glenn, a beta male compared to him, an alpha male. Once he called Glenn a workhorse, and I had to defend my beloved Glenn. I should have done it, but I didn't. Kate's death was a shock. She was 68 and had no signs of an aneurysm. Peter was stunned and couldn't function at first. The alpha male relied completely on my sister, who worked quietly behind the scenes, polishing his star image. Without her, he was like a ship without a rudder. Glenn, of course, was wonderful. He included Peter more in his life, afraid that he would be left alone. He reacted very painfully when people pushed his wheelchair. Once, a stranger pushed him in a supermarket. It was one of the few times I saw him lose his temper. He was so angry. The only people he trusted to push him were me, the girls, our nephew Ryan, and Peter. That was very important to Glenn. That's how much he trusted Peter. He shouldn't have done that. How could I have listened to Peter and all his nonsense? He started working on me almost the day after Kate's funeral. "Christina, could you come over and help me sort through her things? I can't do it myself." He needed my help, and I soon realized that he had let the house go. This beautiful house. It would have fallen into disrepair if I hadn't stepped in. I hired a cleaner, but I often stopped by to check on him and help around the house. He seemed so lost and lonely, and I liked that I was needed and could help him. It was unusual for me. I felt virtuous, almost self-sacrificing. I was helping my brother-in-law in his time of need. Maybe at 62, I was finally growing up? Why did I want to help him so much? At the same time, I was so annoyed that I was helping my sweet Glenn, who really needed my help. I was so frustrated by how much time it took to meet his needs. We had to plan everything when we were going out for the day or going somewhere. It made life very complicated. With Peter, it was simple. I didn't let go of his hand when he held mine as we walked along the canal. I held his hand tightly. It had been a long time since I had walked with a man holding my hand. I missed it. I was so selfish, you know. I also liked spending time at Peter's house. Glenn and I had a beautiful house, but it wasn't a big detached house with electric gates like Kate liked. It was very spacious, and after a while I began to imagine that it was my house, that I was the queen of everything I saw. Life here was easier than at home. Peter relied on me more and more. He cried when I hugged him. I was his comfort. So if his hands sometimes wandered, it didn't mean anything. He needed comfort. Gradually, he began to pick on me, adding to my disappointment over Glenn's illness. "This isn't fair to you, Chris. You're exhausted. I can see it. You shouldn't have to take care of someone at your age. You deserve better. I'm sure if it bothered Glenn, he could arrange for extra help. He needs to stop relying on himself. Not everything revolves around him, you know. He always told me that I worked too much, that it was too much for me, that I deserved to be taken care of. I tried not to agree. I really did. Everything came to a head during the cruise. Glenn and I had been on cruises before, but we had never been on a river cruise. I had always dreamed of doing it, and Glenn said we would go when we retired. Of course, by then he was already ill. In his condition, he couldn't go on a river cruise. It wasn't suitable for him because of his disability. Sometimes you had to get off the ship and transfer to other boats, and there were no internal lifts. For someone with his limited mobility, it was simply impossible. Peter knew this and saw his chance. He decided to take me on a cruise down the Rhine to thank me for all the support I had given him after Kate's death. I'm ashamed to admit that I never thought about how much Glenn had supported him. Although Peter and I weren't sleeping together at the time, I had no doubt that I was behaving like a wife. Not only did we hold hands, but we kissed, hugged, and I caressed him several times. I was just comforting him in my own way. I didn't cross any serious boundaries. Peter wanted more, but I refused until he mentioned the cruise. I hoped Glenn would agree. He always wanted me to be happy and knew he had disappointed me with the river cruise. Peter was sure that if we explained everything to him properly, he would understand. Peter was very persuasive, and in the end, I believed him. Peter suggested we not tell Glenn. That way, he would have time to sort out his doubts while we were away. It would give him a chance to miss me. Chris, if he's even the slightest bit of a husband and loves you the way he says he does, he won't deny you this. You deserve it. He'll be so happy you came back that he'll forgive you for leaving without him and for everything else, he smiled. Everything else was obvious. We would be sharing a cabin. Peter would expect intimacy from me. At the time, my libido was a little sluggish, but his idea of being with him in this way had a certain appeal to me. Don't forget that he had been working on me for several months. I got turned on when he crossed the line from kissing and caressing. It was indecent. I felt desired. Glenn still wanted me. Glenn still loved me and believed I was beautiful. I knew that. But when another man said the same thing, it excited me. Why wasn't Glenn enough for me? Peter said he would pay caregivers to look after Glenn and give him any help he needed. I knew Glenn would hate that. He had always been a very proud man. That Saturday, Glenn left with Emma. He often spent a few hours with one of the girls on Saturdays. It was the perfect time to escape. Throughout the week, I had been slowly gathering my things. I left him a note and my phone number, which was important because I didn't want anyone to be able to contact me. If I was leaving my real life, I couldn't let reality interfere, right? The note read, "My dear Glenn, I'm sorry to leave like this without warning. I'm going away with Peter for 10 days. He wants to thank me for the support I've given him over the last few months. He says I need a break. He's treating me to that river cruise I've always wanted to go on. Don't worry, I'll be fine. It's only 10 days, I'll be back soon, and everything will be as usual. Peter has arranged for caregivers to come to your place if you need them. He doesn't want you to suffer while I'm away. He doesn't want you to have any difficulties. He's thinking of both of us. You won't like it, but they'll be there if you need help. Please think about it. Maybe they can help you and I won't worry. It's only 10 days. I love you and I know you love me, so I know you won't be angry with me for this. I'm sorry for doing this. I couldn't bear being apart from you. See you soon. With love, Christina." I heard Peter's car pull up. I turned around and felt a heavy weight of guilt for a moment. I wanted to stop, but I kept walking. The boat was surprisingly small and cozy, just as it had been described. The cabin was luxurious, but it was so small that it would be difficult to avoid intimacy in such a space, even if you wanted to. I tried to look away while Peter changed for dinner. I had seen him in his swimming trunks many times since he and Kate got a pool. But this was different. Later that evening, I knew I would see and touch his body in a different way. It's terrible, but I was fascinated watching him dress so easily, just as Glenn had always done before he got sick. Now getting dressed was painful for Glenn, and I hated to see him struggle. How could I not have realized that I was about to cause Glenn the most intense pain of his life? That evening at dinner, Peter introduced me as his wife. It was a shock, but it actually helped. It all seemed made up and somehow diminished the guilt I might have felt. If it wasn't real, it couldn't hurt anyone, right? That night, I changed into a nightgown in the bathroom. I knew what was coming. I had to try for Peter. He deserved it because he had been so generous. I knew I had to thank him properly. Why had I never done this for Glenn? I won't lie. After so many years, being with someone else was exciting. I was shocked by how excited Peter was when I came out of the bathroom. The sex itself wasn't very satisfying. It was normal. But he didn't know how to please me the way Glenn did. He was rough, fast, and surprisingly athletic for his age. I believed it was sweet of him. He could be so sweet at times. I was starting to believe that he cared about me. I'd like to say we had a terrible time, but that's not true. I enjoyed all the sights. I loved holding Peter's hand as we walked through the streets of Cologne and Würzburg and admired the architecture. I liked Mainz and its old town. Walking through the medieval market squares was like being in a movie. It all added to my sense of unreality as Peter and I spent more and more time together. I really enjoyed spending time with Peter, even if the excitement of sex with a new man wore off quickly. He was insatiable. I would like to say that I felt guilty, but I didn't. I was sad that I wasn't here with Glenn, but I knew that was impossible. He would never have been able to cope with it. I hope he will let me make it up to him with a more suitable vacation when I return. Sometimes I felt sad, but not too guilty. I justified my actions by telling myself that I deserved it. Peter deserved it. I was making him happy again. I supported him and was kind when he needed it. As the cruise came to an end, I became pensive. It would be nice to stay in this bubble reality, in this alternate reality. It was pleasant. It was time to go home and face the music. I knew I would have a lot of apologizing to do, especially for leaving without a word, even though I explained in the note, right? Peter kept assuring me that Glenn would be happy to have me back. He had a phone, but he kept it turned off most of the time. He talked to Ryan and said everyone was in shock, but okay. Ryan visited Glenn and spent some time with him. I was glad the family was supporting him. I knew I would have a lot to explain when I got home, but I didn't expect my key to not work. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. I looked in the car and realized that all my things were still there. There was an envelope taped to the steering wheel, a letter from Glenn. The handwriting was uneven, and I knew he had written it himself. He must have been in a lot of pain. Christina, I have loved you all my life. I tried so hard to be a loving, attentive husband. I tried not to repeat my father's mistakes. I lived to make you happy and to build a family. My happiness was your happiness. Of course, I always knew you loved me more than I loved you. I accepted that. I felt terrible guilt when I became disabled, but it wasn't about how it affected me. I felt guilty for letting you down, for not being the person I used to be. All that therapy convinced me that I was still the same person, that I was still worth something. The same person, just with some limitations. It was all for nothing. My self-belief had been wasted. I started to really believe that I still had something to offer, that I still had enough left in me to be the person you still want and need. To find out that wasn't true, and in such a cruel way, was unforgivable. I invited that bastard into my home when he was in mourning. I tried my best to support him because I felt so sorry for him. He had lost his wife, his love. I couldn't bear to think how hard it must be for him. Now I know. I keep thinking about what I did wrong. I've come to the conclusion that my only mistake was letting that snake into our paradise. It's strange that I cried with him over the loss of his wife, and he will celebrate my loss. I cried for him, and he laughed at me. I'm sure you laughed a lot at my misfortune during your trip. I hope it was worth it. No longer yours, Glenn. I sat on the driveway for half an hour until my tears subsided enough for me to return to Peter. I had nowhere else to go. It was only much later that I realized Peter wasn't surprised to see me and didn't notice that he handed me a glass of wine he had already filled for me. Here, have a drink, he said. Don't worry, my love. Everything will be fine. Now you can stay here with me. I'll take care of you. You won't need anything, you'll see. I'll make you so happy. It seemed that my escape from real life had become my real life. What choice did I have? I couldn't have what I wanted, a life with Glenn. At first, my 2 daughters wouldn't even talk to me. Ryan barely spoke to Peter, but when he retired, he took over his business. He was kind of forced to talk to his father. Ryan wouldn't look me in the eye on the rare occasions when he came home. He didn't want to talk about his Uncle Glenn, and I didn't want to talk about anything else. How was Glenn? Was he okay? Was he safe? Who was looking after him? Peter told me that the caregivers never left the house when we weren't there. I wanted to leave my marriage for just 10 days. I didn't want it to fall apart. I missed him and worried about him. I know it's hard to believe, but I believed he would forgive me. Peter was very supportive, but he was the only one who could give me advice and comfort. If Glenn loved you as much as he said he did, he would forgive you. At that moment, I had no one to tell me that if I loved Glenn as much as I claimed to, I wouldn't have left him to sleep with his brother-in-law. After several weeks of no contact, which turned into months, Peter helped me realize that there was no going back. Glenn would never forgive me. He hired a divorce lawyer for me. He told me to give Glenn everything, the house and the money. He would keep everything and we would get alimony, but I would be left with nothing. After all, Peter was a wealthy man and would take care of me. If I married him, I would be the wife of a rich man. I would want for nothing. The divorce wasn't final yet, and I was already wearing Peter's engagement ring. It wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted my Glenn. I wanted to go back to the past, but to be honest, I wanted him before he got sick. Peter was sure that the rest of the family would warm up to us a little if they saw that we had left Glenn in good financial shape. Peter treated me wonderfully. He cooked dinner and took me to the best restaurants. Of course, life in that beautiful house seemed unreal. Everything seemed unreal. But it all helped me forget what I had lost. My beloved Glenn, the respect of my daughters and nephew. Allison and Emma hardly spoke to me, but at least now they answered my calls, and I hoped that there was some truth in Peter's assurances that things would work out in time. The girls refused to talk about their father. That was my punishment. I desperately wanted to know about him, but they refused. The only thing Emma ever said was, "You took a broken man and broke him into even smaller pieces. We're slowly putting him back together. Don't ask about him anymore." Soon we divorced, and I was left with only my pension and my car. Peter quickly replaced the car with a new one, a Mercedes convertible. He knew I had always admired Kate's car. Our wedding was planned for a month after the divorce. It all happened so fast that I didn't have time to believe what I had done. Peter didn't let me get bored. He was still insatiable in bed. He wanted it all the time. I asked him to slow down. "We're still on our honeymoon. I've waited years for you and I can't help wanting you." Just a week before the wedding, we had sex again, and he growled loudly. He collapsed on top of me. I was used to his passion, but this was different. I stroked his head and talked to him, but he didn't respond. At first, I couldn't move him. He seemed like a dead weight. Then I realized he was dead. I screamed, but no one heard me. After that, I was in shock. Ryan took care of everything. He arranged the funeral and everything else. He ordered catering for the wake at the house. I hoped to see Allison and Emma. I needed them now more than ever. Other than agreeing to come to the funeral to support Ryan, I hadn't spoken to them. I saw Glenn for the first time since I left on that damn cruise. Only he wasn't my Glenn anymore. I was shocked to see him, but I couldn't help smiling. He must have had a very good day pain-wise because he was using a cane. After the ceremony, I saw him at home. I hadn't expected that. "Oh, Glenn, I'm so glad to see you, even on such a sad day," I stammered. "Sad? What do you mean, sad?" he snapped. "This is the best party I've been to in years. I'm only here to make sure that bastard is dead." With those words, the love of my life was gone, taking with him all hope that this nightmare would ever end. As it turned out, it was only the beginning. I went back into the house and went about my business. People saw me crying quietly and believed I was crying for Peter. But in reality, all my tears were for Glenn. After the last guests had left, Ryan and the girls sat me down in the living room. "Well, Aunt Chrissy, this is hard for me to say, but I don't think you deserve to be lied to, so here's the deal. Dad didn't change his will after Mom died. I know he was going to do it after your wedding. He told me because I was supposed to be in the business. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't happen, so I'm inheriting all of his property." I looked at him and suddenly understood what he was talking about. "What do I get?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing except what he gave you. Except for the Mercedes, of course, because he bought it with business money. My business. The engagement ring itself was very expensive, and I think you deserve it for your services, so to speak." I was simply stunned. I was in such shock over Peter's death that I couldn't think about anything else. I just assumed. I often did that, for example, assuming that Glenn would forgive me. Allison spoke next. "We were upstairs, Mom, gathering all your things. By law, you should have been notified in advance, but I'm sure you'll spare yourself and Ryan the humiliation. Right?" she added firmly, looking me in the eye. "Especially after you killed his father," Emma added. "What do you mean?" "I didn't kill him, he just had a heart attack. It could have happened at any time." "Yes, Dad had a weak heart. I don't believe he told you that, did he?" Ryan said, looking at me. "He didn't want you to know that you traded one sick man for another. He could have lived for many more years, but all those trips to make you happy and all the sex to satisfy you, well, it couldn't end well, could it? However, I can't blame you for the Viagra. He swallowed it like candy, completely overdosed. All to prove his love for you, to make you stay. In the end, Peter desperately wanted me to stay. It killed him. I killed him. Don't doubt it, Mom. Uncle Peter was determined to get you after Aunt Kate died. He pursued you with the same determination he showed in the boardroom." Emma said, "I don't believe you had a chance, but it would have been nice if you had at least tried." "I tried. He wanted me to, and I told him—" "Don't waste your breath, Mom," Emma interrupted sharply. "You wanted what he offered, and you believed you could have it all, and we would forgive and forget, but we won't forgive you. Ever. I can't believe you were married to Dad for over 40 years and knew so little about him. Not only did you treat him badly, but you believed he would forgive you? That you had the right to treat him that way. We always knew it was all about you, but I didn't realize how selfish you were. We will never forgive you for what you did to Uncle Glenn. He was the best man I ever knew. I always admired him. I loved my father, but he was a complicated man. I spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to him. But to be honest, Uncle Glenn's approval meant more to me. He was always an honest man. I wanted to be like him. That's why I'm not kicking you out on the street. The girls and I found a small apartment for you to rent. It's small, but it's new and it's part of my real estate portfolio. I'll even let you live there for 3 months for free. After that, I'm sure your pension will cover the expenses. Of course, if you need transportation, you'll have to find a car yourself. In the meantime, there's a bus stop right outside the building. In a few years, you'll get a pass, and then you won't even have to pay." I sat and looked at my luggage and the plastic bags lying next to me. It was hard to understand what was left of my life in this sad pile. It wasn't supposed to be like this. "Can I talk to your father?" I asked the girls. "Well, you can try talking to Mom," Emma replied. "But you'll have to hurry. He's moving to Tenerife next week. He believes the climate is better for his pain, and it has everything he needs for people with disabilities. I'm going with him. It will be a new start for both of us. He promised to visit us as often as possible." Dad was worried that he would have little money after selling the house, so Ryan stepped in and helped him out a little. "He didn't want to take money from Dad," Ryan smiled. "But when I told him it was my money now and I wanted him to take it, he agreed. It's only fair that I help him too. I couldn't help you and not help his victim, could I? That would be wrong." Still in shock, I found myself in Ryan's car, which took me to a small apartment. It was clean, modern, and new. I should probably be grateful, but it wasn't supposed to be like this. Everything was supposed to be completely different. I didn't want any of this. Well, you don't always get what you want, do you?